Are you the Sultan of a 500-year-old empire? Has your empire fallen into decline and decay? Is your empire no longer as strong and powerful as it used to be? Do you want to preserve the state, but in doing so create your own downfall and contribute to the foundations of modern secular Turkey? History Addicts, welcome back to History Supply. I'm Rishi. And in this video, we're going to be talking about the last time someone tried to modernize a 500-year-old empire. Before we go into what went wrong and how the Tanzimat reforms actually contributed to the downfall of the Ottoman Empire, let's look at the facts. The Tanzimat reforms began with the noble edict of the Rose Chamber, Sultan Abdülmecid I, in 1839. And ended with the Ottoman Constitution of 1876. They were about modernization, moving from the old system based on religion to modern European notions of a state. Hold on a minute. The Tanzimat reforms weren't really meant to be radical. They were more about preserving the state than anything. The goal of the Tanzimat reforms was adoption of European political modernity within Ottoman institutions and bureaucracy. That's why first priority was naturally the reform of the military, and only then administrative reform like taxation. Military reform meant the Ottoman army was reorganized based on the successful Prussian conscription system. Tax reform meant introducing a standard system of taxation to prevent abuse. Legal reforms involved new codes of commercial and criminal law, largely modeled after those of France. There were even newly established state courts independent of the ulama or the Islamic Religious Council. In 1846, the first comprehensive plan for state education was put forward, provided for a complete system of education from primary to secondary all the way to university level. An even more ambitious plan provided for free and compulsory primary education. Both schemes progressed slowly due to a lack of funds, but they provided the foundation for modern and secular and systematic education later on. Get this, there was even the creation of provincial representative assemblies. Now imagine you're Sultan Abdülmecid I. Why would you go through such a massive headache? Before we discover why, let's go to history trivia. Did you know that homosexuality was actually decriminalized during the Tanzimat reforms? This was way back in the 18th century. Today, homosexuality is still not a crime in the principal successor state to the Ottoman Empire, which is the modern Republic of Turkey. Under the Edict of Toleration, issued in 1844, the death penalty for renouncing Islam or apostasy was even abolished. Tanzimat in some ways meant a move towards more modern, secular values. So why did Sultan Abdülmecid I embark on the Tanzimat reforms? The era of successful invasions had come to an end. The borders of the empire, instead of expanding, had begun to shrink. Decay had crept into the empire. Ineffective tax collection hampered the administration of the empire and the formation of a budget. It's also possible that Tanzimat was to win European diplomatic support at key moments in Ottoman history. Reform announcements coincided with crises. The 1839 edict came when the Ottomans needed European help against Muhammad Ali of Egypt. The 1856 edict when the Ottomans needed European acceptance after the Crimean War. The 1876 constitution came when European pressure for reforms within the empire was mounting. The Sultan wanted to do just one thing: preserve the state. That is why the central reforms of the Tanzimat were actually the military reforms. It's tempting to look at the Tanzimat in a vacuum. However, the process of reform actually began under the previous Sultan, Mahmud II. He began by curbing the power of rival claimants. He undermined the influence of the ulama and popular religious groups. He created a new directorate of charitable endowments, trying to directly control the financial base of the ulama's power. Then he turned to the army, where he set out proposals for an European style of army in 1826. Infantry units, which were once the pride of the Ottoman Empire, mutinied in protest. The Sultan quickly and efficiently massacred them. After that, he referred to this as the Auspicious Incident. Now, before the Tanzimat, you had some pretty terrifying stuff. So after the Tanzimat, did you also have a lot of terrifying stuff? You guessed that right. There was the reign of Abdülhamid II. Abdülhamid continued development of the army and administration, created a gendarmerie, oversaw the growth of communications, especially the telegraph and the railways. And oh yeah, he also created an elaborate spy system to crush any opposition. His brutal repression of the Armenians earned him the European title of the Red Sultan. But he made positive advances in legal reform, education, and economic development. The most significant thing that Abdul Hamid II saw was the Ottoman Constitution of 1876. Arising within the higher Ottoman bureaucracy itself, it was led by Midat Pasha. He sought to control the Sultan. The constitution, or the fundamental law of the Sultanate, was derived entirely from the will of the ruler, who retained full executive power and to whom ministers were individually responsible. The rights of ruler and ruled were set out, but it was still autocracy, not democracy. The parliament summoned under the constitution in 1877 was dissolved less than a year later. It was not recalled until 1908. The Tanzimat reforms brought another group to the spotlight. I'm Namik Kemal. While I admire much of Western civilization, I believe that its best principles are to be found in Islam. In particular, I derive from early Islamic precept and practice the concept of a representative assembly that can provide checks and balances on the Sultan's power. I don't know why the Sultan is indiscriminately adopting Western ideas. This is the first appearance of my group, the Young Turks. We will eventually play a major role in the dissolution of the Ottoman Empire and the formation of modern-day Turkey. But that is a story for another time. History Addicts, the Tanzimat reforms of the Ottoman Empire. Please subscribe and like the video. It means a lot to me personally, and it allows me to keep making videos like these. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.